What? What's up, everybody? You already know what it is. Skirt. Put up all that shit. Remember, yo, why you listen to Playboi? Playboi is that shit, man. All right, man. It's definitely been a long time. If you guys know, you know. Anyway, I've been gone for maybe 2 weeks or something like that. The world is, it's been a crazy time, man. You know, I'll get into all that in a little bit, but let's talk about Drizzy. Drizzy got me back into the shit. So, I was listening to the few new songs that came out. This was the only one that I played more than once. The Shoe Fits. It's interesting. This beat kind of gives me Samurai Champloo vibes, actually. It's very like New Jabez, you know. It's like that kind of beat, lo-fi-ish. I think the song could have really been fire if Drake actually wasn't on the, you know, I took a girl to the Raptors game and then there was a place for the Knicks and all that shit's boring. So the flow was sleepy, and even the snare and the bass is kind of a little sleepy, you know what I mean? But it does have a nice, the melody, sort of the main melody, and all that shit, it's nice. It does sound nice. I just kind of wish the drums were a little bit harder. But this was my favorite cut of the new songs that came out. I wasn't feeling the rest of them. And you know, it's Drake. Drake will always drop something that's better than everyone else's, really, for the most part. But at these days, he's coasting along, you can tell. I think this is one of the better songs I've heard this year, but again, pretty sleepy shit in the grand scheme of things, you know. I shared this with my boy, who's a Drake fan, and he was like, you know, he's an older cat, but, you know, again, this is not a song that anyone has to write home about. Moving on. So, in the midst of all this madness, what have I been bumping? Well, a couple of songs. I think I posted this. All of these are in the community section, by the way. Even when I don't make videos, I'm on YouTube watching shit and, you know what I mean? Keeping up with what's going on in the world. So, I've been listening to this a lot, actually. This is not a song that I grew up listening to like that. The funny thing is that I had this CD. I don't even remember the song. I do remember that there was a song I liked on it. So I did hear this song when it came out. But when I bought the Ashanti CD, I barely listened to that shit. I had it and almost never played it. But I did buy it. And so there was something about it that kind of motivated me to get it. And I think it was probably the song Foolish. You know, I might have talked about this before, but the Foolish beat, which is One More Chance, I believe, Big. Anyways, it's the first time I ever heard that beat. So I remember when Ashanti was singing on it, whichever one of those Biggie records, I think it is One More Chance. When she was singing on it, I remember being like, yo, I love this fucking beat. Like, this beat is crazy. And that's what made me buy the CD. Not realizing that she was really just singing on an old Biggie beat. At that time, I had heard Big already. You have to keep in mind, this was like 2000 or something like that. I'm still in Saudi, so I have heard Big, and I wasn't really a huge fan. I hadn't heard Ready to Die. I didn't hear Ready to Die in full until maybe 2004. So I had heard few joints of Big, and I really liked Kicking the Door. That was the one that made me actually say, you know what, actually, I like this Biggie guy. Or at least listen to it, but I wasn't like a fan. So the point is that Foolish record that Ashanti did kind of just hit me. When it came out, I was like, oh, this shit is fire. I gotta get the CD. So I do remember buying the CD, listening to it like once or twice, and then kind of not really listening to it again. But I do think the CD, going back to it now, it's not bad. It's actually Ashanti's first album. It's not bad at all. I mean, this song, Scared, to me is the best song, period, that she put out. But, you know, it's actually not a bad CD. It's got personality. The beats are okay. You know, I don't think it's an amazing CD, but it's not bad at all. And then the next one I've been listening to a lot. Been bumping the shit out of this. Whoa! It's like shit. A lot of TLC lately. Shout out to TLC. Whoa! Yeah, man. I ain't never. Facts. Facts. This beat's nuts. I love this record, man. So I've been playing this a lot. Of course. Yeah, IDF theme music right here. I'm gonna talk about that in a second. Yeah, tech, no cow, one hand, hold down, slam. Let's go. This is my shit right here, man. Glocks. What's in opposition to hell? Facts. These niggas gonna tell. Cause there's no hell in myself. This shit is shorted. Yeah, man. Max on my face. Yo, safe. Cooperate. Everyone safe. I said little bit. Let me see tasting. See what says trying to figure out how I'm gonna get him like deal. Feel like I'm Mace. But she got about 8. Usually don't walk with no cape. Niggas eat apes and move up with nuts that bust to break facts. Indian Ocean will lay on my niggas. Dialect. Damn. Body in Hellcat. We pop cool race. If you gon' hate, nigga then hate. Facts. Bait. Don't wanna talk, no, I don't want debate. Roll for the bridges like rock with the strip. I made $1 million right there. And he's like, woke up, I made $2 million on Monday. You was my son, you will be me on one day. That shit's fire, man. That's my fun track. Shells. So I've been listening to that a lot. Obviously, Uzi blacked the fuck out on that. And then, last but not least, you should already know. Come on, nigga. QBC. Shout out to Queensbridge, always. About to take over your area. IDF theme music. Let the light protect the light. All right. So let me be more serious here, okay? You know, in the last month, since these horrible attacks that Hamas did, has kind of it's really shown a lot of very interesting things to me, namely how global anti-Semitism is. I'm actually really shocked at it. I have to say, it's one of the most, amazing things I've ever seen in sort of worldwide media, like almost ever. Like I'm actually very stunned by it. So I've really been very interested in this whole conflict and focusing on it and like really like trying to understand the depths of it, and I'm surprised by the protests, but also not surprised in a sense. So you have to understand, as a guy that lived in Saudi Arabia, I think I've said this before, but I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I was there in middle school, a little bit of primary school, quite a bit of middle school, and all of high school. My best friend in high school was Palestinian. My class was like in high school, maybe like 80% Arab. So I knew people from Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, so I was there when 9/11 happened. I was also there when the second Intifada happened. So this is not new to me, right? So that's why I have certain opinions. Then someone might say, yo, you don't know what you're talking about. But then I ask that person, have you ever lived in the Middle East? Better yet, have you ever stepped outside of Brooklyn? Are you talking to me? You know what I mean? Like, I lived in the Middle East. You know what I mean? I was there. Like, I experienced certain shit. And I'm very close. I know people on both sides, essentially, right? Like, their families and things, Like, my boy in high school, I knew his family. He knows my family, right? This is not some, like, oh, I had that one black friend. That's not how this goes. You know what I mean? So I'm very familiar. The first time I ever heard of the words IDF were from him. You know what I'm saying? So because we talked about how he had a family member that got killed in some sort of IDF raid and all that kind of stuff. So these are things that I'm definitely familiar with these topics. Now, I'm not no scholar, okay? I am an outsider, all things considered, and I say that. I always say that just to let people know. Right, I'm an outsider. It doesn't necessarily affect me, but it's not like I'm completely ignorant. compared to 99% of those people out here who are protesting in support of Hamas, I am basically like a serious expert compared to them. I know way more. So it's been interesting to say, and like I also want to say, I've definitely have very close Jewish friends even to this day. Like one of my boys is Jewish, love him to death, and I know his family, and he knows my family. Like it's like literally we're real close, and I know a lot about Israel as a result of him being my friend, and we've been friends for decades. So these are people that I know intimately. My parents have been to Israel. I know one of my brothers has been to Israel. So this is not some shit that I'm just talking out of my ass. You know what I mean? Like, again, a lot of people on the internet have never actually been to the Middle East, let alone live there, so don't know what they're talking about. Okay? So, long story short, I am shocked at just how hateful like the rhetoric has been against Israel and the Jewish people. And my heart goes out to them because they are living in the Twilight Zone right now, man. Like, you might not realize it, but the stuff that happened on October 7th is some Twilight Zone shit. I think people are going to figure out, and as more and more, I don't know, I think Israel is shell shocked, and to a certain extent, they're not. It's not that they're not talking about it, they're actually really shocked at how many people are siding with terrorists. But the point is, if you dig and you actually look and see what happened on October 7th, it's not normal. That's pure terrorism. A lot of times things get watered down now to make it look like, oh, well, Israel and Palestine have always been at war, so like Hamas just struck. And it just was like a regular strike. No, there was nothing regular about that shit, right? Like that shit was straight sadism, right? Like, I don't even want to get into the details too heavy, but you can find out, man. Like, we're talking families burned alive and stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like beheadings and rape and all that crazy shit. Like barbaric stuff. And that's again why I'm like, say what you say about Israel, but there's absolutely no way you can be just letting Hamas off the hook. They gotta go. Okay? They gotta go. Like that's just the fact of the matter. And I'm glad that Israel is taking them out. And frankly, I can't wait for them to be exterminated. Hamas is out here committing all kinds of atrocities, not just against the Israeli or the Jewish people, by the way, because Hamas have a history of doing this to their own people. So the point is, again, if you really support Palestinian life, you would be anti-Hamas too. Like, I don't understand this idea that you supposedly care about Palestinian life, but you're supporting Hamas. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because they're literally killing Palestinians themselves, and they're preventing Palestinians from progressing. So that's my issue with it. This kind of conversation can go a million ways. I think, let me talk about two things that I think people should know or should think about when they engage in this conversation. Because right now I hear the word Zionism a lot, and it's supposed to have this evil connotation. And to me, Zionism is the new anti-Semitic language, right? And I say this because there's nothing wrong with Zionism. Zionism at its core is very simple. It's the right for Jews to self-determine, right? Essentially for them to express themselves as Jewish people and live on their own land. That's all Zionism means, right? I ain't got no problem with that. I'm Igbo, I'm Nigerian, okay? Like, I have the right to be Igbo and to live on Igbo land as an Igbo person. So that's literally what Zionism is, right? Now, why is this important for Jews? Jews have been conquered and chased out of almost everywhere they've ever lived, and they've been exterminated and killed. Okay, this is just basic history stuff, okay? The other thing that people need to understand, and is super clear, okay, this is just history and fact, is that Jews are indigenous to the area of Palestine, okay, Israel. Jews are from there. They're indigenous to that place. They literally are the peoples that have always lived there, okay? So the idea that they colonized it is like mad weird because that's just not historically accurate on any level. The Jews have always been there. In fact, when they got chased out, some Jews still remained and have always remained in that area of Palestine, right? When the Romans conquered that area, Judea, I believe they renamed it Syria, Palestina, or some shit like that, right? So the point is, Jews have always been there. Jews remained there even after they were conquered, and even if after they got chased out and went into Europe and parts of Africa or whatever. So the point is that them deciding, and this is, I would say, the Western's fault, after experiencing death in the Middle Ages, being killed off randomly, look up blood libel, and obviously the world wars and then the Holocaust, Jews realized, look, listen, like there's nowhere we can go where we feel safe. At some point, society is going to want to kill us. So we should just go home. Like instead of living in some random place where we're going to be exterminated, let's just go home where we can protect ourselves and be protected. That's what Zionism is. There's nothing else to it. So when you say that you're anti-Zionist, you're basically saying that you're against Jews having the right to express, to be themselves and to have a home. And that's anti-Semitic. I mean, it's just basic. Sorry, you know? And I know a lot of people go, oh, well, I'm not, just because I'm anti-Zionist doesn't mean I'm anti-Semitic. No, it does mean you're anti-Semitic if you really dig through it. So that's number one. The other thing that I think is important is that you got to understand that there's many kinds of Jews out here. I know a lot of people look at Jewish people as basically white people with a special privilege card. I'm being honest. That's how a fair amount of people look at Jews, but those people are ignorant. And let's just call it what it is. There's all kinds of Jews. Now, Jewish life and Jewish history is complicated and it is long. And I do recommend that if you are interested and you want to be fair, I think you should kind of try to at least dig a little bit, because there's many kinds of Jews. There's Arab Jews, obviously. There's like Mizrahi and Ashkenazi is more of the European, those Jews who went into Europe and lived in Europe for, hundreds of years. So there's obviously the Ethiopian black Jews. There's all kinds of Jewish people. So when you kind of say, oh, Israel is this white supremacist state, you're lying to yourself, respectfully, because basic data tells you otherwise, right? There's all kinds of people that live in Israel, all kinds. There certainly are Ashkenazi Jews that live in Israel, but there's also like Mizrahi, there's random people, there's Bedouins that live there, Druze, like it's a whole mix of people. So again, anyway, that's just the whole point. I do think that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of hatred, and like when you really sit and think about all this stuff, it just boils down to basic hatred. Now, I want to kind of talk about two last things so I get off this very dark and depressing topic, all things considered. But let's talk about Hamas for a second, okay? Who I don't like, and I've been very adamant about how evil they are, because that's literally the conversation here, to me, is they've got to go. Now, people are saying that there should be a ceasefire. I think a ceasefire is a dumb idea for very obvious reasons, because it allows Hamas to recover and recuperate, and it gives them legitimacy. You don't want that, okay? You just don't. Hamas wants to exterminate everybody that are not Hamas. So the idea that you would support that, they're not a resistance group, okay? They're not fighting on behalf of Palestinians. They're just terrorists, okay? Muslim caliphate bullshit, okay? Islamist garbage, essentially. So I don't want them around. I definitely want them disbanded. Now, the ceasefire thing, it sounds hot on the surface. Obviously, most of the people, if not all of the people who are saying the ceasefire stuff, want Israel to stop firing. Essentially, they want Israel to just kind of not defend itself against one of the craziest terrorist attacks I definitely have heard of or seen in my lifetime, right? So, because there's no conversation about what Hamas should do, whether Hamas should just surrender or just give up the hostages. It's just kind of like this idea of Israel, just stop. Civilians die, okay? Are people getting killed due to Israel bombing? Absolutely. I'm sure there are. To be honest with you, I actually salute the IDF, and I think the IDF are doing a pretty good job, because given how densely populated Gaza is, the casualty rate could actually be triple of what it is right now, right? And of course, the Hamas we know that they're terrorists, and we know that they use human shields, and they are shooting Palestinians and preventing them from leaving, right? Which is insane, but that's how terrorists operate. So given all that, the fact that the civilian death rate is what it is, I have to say is pretty commendable, given, what Israel is trying to do, right? Because it could be a lot worse. right? And of course, we all know that Hamas lies, so we don't even know where those figures are coming from because everything is filtered through them. The soldiers, the Hamas themselves are so embedded into the civilian life of Palestine that they throw the numbers of their dead terrorists into civilian population deaths and just make shit up because they're terrorists. That's what terrorists do. So you have no idea that, to be honest with you, the death toll could be a lot less in terms of actual civilian death. But you wouldn't know because Hamas just out here lying, right? And it's despicable shit. But what you gonna do? Terrorist gonna terrorist. Now, I will say that the war's got to continue because it's unfortunate. Civilian death is a part of war. It's an unavoidable part of death, or I should say, an unavoidable part of war. So it's got to continue because you want Hamas eradicated, just like I want Boko Haram and all these like weirdo Islamist extremists groups. Like I want them gone, right? Like why the fuck would I want them around? Either reform or go, right? We don't have space for you in 2023, to be honest with you. So I think that, you know, for you to stop the war, just, you know, in the meantime to let Hamas recuperate so they can come back and continue to do even a bigger scale attack makes the lives of those who have died meaningless. You know, I think that people don't really, it's like they don't really care. They say they care, but they don't really think a step further. You know what I'm saying? Let the war continue, let Hamas get eradicated, and then that's it, right? At least for a long time. That's it. Those lives that passed away, the civilian lives, we remember them. And, you know, for those who are into prayer, we pray for them. And their lives actually meant something. They died, but it brought about a new era of peace. As opposed to just having people die, there's a ceasefire, we stop, Hamas continue doing what they're doing because they've said that they will continue to do what they're doing. And then more people die. So not only are you raising the civilian death rate, but you're making the lives of those who died previously meaningless. So we don't want that. Yeah. And I would say the last thing is I got a lot of love for, look, I love people in general. I've lived a lot of different places in the world. I've experienced a lot of different things. People might say, hey, Tochi, man, what you're saying sounds very anti-Palestinian right now. Sure, it's not true. Like I said, I got a lot of love for Palestinians. Like my best friend in high school is Palestinian. I always respect that. I lived in Saudi Arabia. I will always respect on any level. I will always respect the Arab population because they allowed me to live on their land, right? As a citizen. I mean, I remember I've had experiences, man. Like I remember when I was young, my father took me to a friend of his was Bedouin, and we hung out in the desert. We went to like his basically ancestral home of sorts. And I just remember hanging out in the desert. It was the first time I ever shot a gun. He had a gun, and we were shooting at cans and stuff. And we went to like the tent like towards the afternoon, evening. And so we're in the desert and kind of like almost like you see in the movies, you know, like this big tent. We go in, there's like carpet everywhere, and I just remember there was no table, but there was food. There was all this rice and stuff, and we just kind of sat on the ground and ate, you know. And as a kid, I was like, oh man, I wish there was a table. Like I remember being, you know, you're a kid. It's simple, right? I remember being like, why isn't there a table and why are there no spoons, right? But I look back on that fondly. I mean, this gentleman let us into his home, right? So again, like I got a lot of love for people, man. Like I've been a lot of places, and I realize that people are people, right? If you're a good person, you're a good person, and it doesn't matter what race you are. You know what I'm saying? So the point is, though, having lived in the Middle East and having observed certain things, I do think that the culture of, well, there's a couple of things. I do think that the culture that the Palestinians have is a dead culture in terms of wanting to always attack and eradicate Israel. I think that's got to go. And I hope that this Hamas eradication will exterminate that, hopefully forever. It's a very, very toxic culture. And I think it basically kills kids before they're actually killed. You know, I know that a lot of people say, what about the Palestinian babies, right? And they look at these images of kids being pulled out of rubble. But honestly, when I see that shit, I just see kids who are dead already, respectfully. You know, because the culture is a culture that celebrates death, celebrates martyrdom, celebrates killing other people to get your martyrdom and all that nonsense. That's got to go. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. I'm speaking very plainly here, but that has got to go. You know, let's think forward now. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully. And I say this again as an outsider to the Palestinians and others, you know, who are sort of embroiled in this conflict. Think about the future. What do we want the kids to get? Because you can say all this shit about Israel and make Israel your enemy. But Israel pulled out of Gaza in like 2005, 2006, with all the aid and all the money that Gaza got, okay? Since then, Hamas turned that shit into like a horrible shithole, respectfully, you know? And is now raining terror on all the kids that are there. So that to me shows a culture that is toxic and rotten at the core. And that needs to change, you know? Because look, like I said, I got Palestinian homies, man, you know? I respect them. I think they definitely have a certain warrior spirit that I respect in a way, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I think that these are people who are capable of very beautiful things and great things. But I do think that they have been pawns. They've been allowed themselves to get played by all these sort of Islamists and Arab states who use them to basically fight against Israel, right? While at the same time keeping Palestinians at bay and be like, no, we're not gonna accept you. and that's gotta fuck with them mentally, you know what I'm saying? So enough of that. I think that hopefully we can move on from that, and hopefully I should say they can move on from that. And I hope to see the culture change because it's there. It's so pervasive. The fact of the matter is that most Palestinians support Hamas. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. That's why, again, most of them support and or are complicit with Hamas, right? So the reality of the matter is that they are responsible for what happened on October 7th. They elected Hamas. They agree with Hamas. Most of them are complicit. They won't say nothing bad about Hamas. So if Israel attacks you as a result and is trying to get rid of this horrible, horrible extremist group that you elected and you support, then you are part of the problem. So to be honest with you, when I see like, oh, this person, you know, got killed or whatever as a result of IDF bombing, I'm like, well, you're another Hamas terrorist or would-be terrorist. So what difference does it make, really? Again, that culture's got to go, right? It's got to go. Okay? So again, not saying that I don't have love for either groups of people. I love people and I want to see people be happy and living their best lives. But hate cannot be the way to go and live your best life. It just isn't. And usually when you see people who hate, they always hate on their own. They hate on other people. You know what I'm saying? Like Hamas are a hate organization. You can tell. They have all the trademarks of a hate organization. They torture and kill their own and maim and rape their own civilians, right? Their own leaders, the way that they've set this up, their leaders live fancy lives in Qatar. A lot of people don't know where Qatar is or what Qatar is about. You know what I'm saying? I lived in Saudi, right? Their own leaders are billionaires who don't even live in Gaza or the West Bank. And you don't think that's weird? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's pure exploitation on Hamas's part. These are evil people, respectfully. And they gotta go. They just gotta go, man. Anyway, I think I'm gonna leave it there unless something really crazy happens with this conflict, but I am watching it and it is the most fascinating thing I've seen in a very, very long time. So yeah, I haven't been doing videos, frankly, because that's been taking up my sort of brain, my brain space in a sense, in terms of media. And my heart goes out to all the Jewish people that are going through it right now because they are going through it. If you have a Jewish friend, please reach out to them, let them know that you support them, at least in the sense of, hey, you know what, I'm sorry about what happened, and I just want to express my condolences because it's real. Like, that stuff is not no play stuff, man. Like, what Hamas did was insane. So that's one aspect of it. I've been focusing on that. Obviously, I've been real busy. Blood World is still coming, developing a lot of stuff on the side as well. So that's been taking up my time. And frankly, you know, rap's not really doing much. You know, it's very, very sleepy at this stage. It's pretty dead, as I've said before, and I'm not surprised that in 2023 we're at its worst. Hip hop's at its worst that it's ever been. Ski! Sexy Red might have album of the year. I mean, it's bad, man. This shit is terrible, right? And you know, and to be honest with you, Sexy Red is not good, but Sexy Red's better than a lot of these guys. You know what I mean? It's bad, man. Like, hip hop is just not saying nothing important. I mean, look at what's going on in the world today. This Israel-Palestine or Israel-Hamas conflict's got the whole world paying attention. You got mass protests, all this kind of shit. And Drake puts out a song talking about, oh, you and James, are you hanging out with James Harden? I seen your girl. Like, nigga, who gives a fuck, okay? Hip-hop is political, okay? That's one aspect of hip-hop that people don't really talk about. There is a political aspect to hip-hop. So when you say, yo, Tochi, why you talking all this politics shit? I'm a hip-hop dude, okay? Hip-hop is about using the damn brain, okay? There is a political aspect to this shit. Let's go. You know what I mean? Public Enemy. There is a political consciousness to rap. If you really listen to rap long enough, you'll start to realize that hip-hop at its core is about freedom, especially freedom of expression. So freedom is important, right? I want rappers to address some of these topics. You don't have to necessarily rap about Israel and Hamas directly. You can if you want. It would be great too. But you also just talk about something that's a little bit more meaningful and will actually last while putting a dope beat behind it. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, like, I'm just not going to pay attention. In this type of time, if you're, like, this is the whole thing for me, right? I'm a media guy. I make shit that's relevant, that's important. Blood World is some important shit. All this stuff about dogma and people believing some crazy shit and not having critical thinking to go beyond what's obvious and being trapped in situations where terrorists can take advantage of your stunted thinking. This is the kind of stuff I like to write about and talk about because it's important. This is literally what's going on in the world, right? So when my shit comes out, you're gonna be like, yo, this is fire. Absolutely. But if you're some rapper who's just talking about random nonsense that I've heard a million times, that's clearly oblivious to the world, that's apathetic to the world, then I ain't got no time for that. And I've not got much to say on it. You know what I mean? Anyway, love y'all. Appreciate y'all still rocking with me. And I'm going to see you more. Okay? Peace.